Good evening, everyone. Let me share my slide. It's an honor and privilege for me to present before you this evening tax matters, particularly update with respect to the 2026 BEAR audit programs and also the roadmap that I will be presenting towards strong tax compliance. Okay, I hope you are seeing now my screen, the PowerPoint. So tonight, I'll present to you two things. Number one, the highlight of the new 2026 BR audit programs. And second, my recommendation as to um, roadmap in terms of promoting that strong tax position. Okay, as you all know, under RMC 107-2025, the BAR suspended the audit operations in last year of November. And during that suspension, they identified gaps to provide a data-driven approach in their new audit programs. They reviewed the assessment process, the existing policies and procedures, and they relaunched the audit program, which is under RMO 1 2026, and further expounded under RMO 6 2026. As a background, there were many complaints, there were many clamors against the audit approach of the BIR coming from different sectors, and they complained towards the office of the president, towards the Senate, towards the DOF, and all of these complaints have been heard. And as one concrete action of the government, the DOF suspended the audit operations, and during that suspension, they reviewed the audit programs. And these are the gaps that were identified. Number one, pre-audit controls. As you all know, when the audit is conducted, when the taxpayer is selected, there is somehow a level of discretion, human intervention driven by the head of the region. He is the one responsible in choosing the tax-based criteria, but it is discretionary as to the choice who will be audited. The other gaps identified is institutional structure. This means that there are several offices created to conduct an audit, and some of them are competing the attention of the taxpayers. There are times that a taxpayer can be audited by several authorities in 1 year, two LOAs or three LOAs. And another gap is audit and assessment. They have one of the major complaints against the audit approach of the BIR is that the bloated and excessive assessment, the harassment, and then IT systems and monitoring, another gap. The audit activity, the audit interaction of BIR towards taxpayers are not documented. So they want it's not visible in the higher ups of the BIR. So they want to strengthen their IT systems and monitoring to monitor, to have an oversee and oversight and even visibility towards the activities of the RDO and the region. Now, as statistics, only 2% of the total collected by the BIR come from LOAS, comes from enforcement. As you all know, our government collects taxes from us in three ways. No? Number one is via voluntary payment. When we file and pay the tax, that's voluntary. That's the first way of paying. Second is via the withholding tax system. When we deal with clients, they withhold tax before they pay us. So that's the second way of paying taxes. Third is via enforcement. So BAR exercises its assessment function, conducts an audit, and collects as a result after deficiency has been established. So statistics says that 2% out of the total collections came from LOAS and mission orders. And 98% is, of course, from voluntary payments by the businesses. And international standard dictates that sets that the collection coming from enforcement is around 3 to 5%, but ours is only 2%. And of the total registered taxpayers, only less than 1%, that's around 0.20%, receive LOAS. And this is the statistics in 2023. There is around 62,000 LOAS issued, which the government generated a total collections of 63 billion. And in 2024, a total of 75,000.5 LOAS issued, and that generates 85 billion total collections. And last year, as of October, for 10 months, they issued LOA totaling 82,000, which generates 78 billion of collections. Remember, this amounts is only roughly 2 to 2.5% of the total collections. Now let's go to the audit programs of the BAR, and some of you may not readily appreciate this because you may not be audited as of the moment, but it's also a good way for you to be oriented how BAR conducts its audit. Okay. Now, the first important change is the clarification as to what kind of audit instruments that BAR issues, or they clarify that when you receive communication from BAR, it doesn't necessarily means an audit. So there are only three audit instruments. One is ELA, Electronic Letter of Authority. Second is mission order. And third is tax verification notice. Okay. And the important change here is that on the face of each audit instrument, there is now a mandatory labels. Like for ELA, it will say full examination. For MO, it's limited authority. And for tax verification notice, it will say limited scope. That will somehow give to the taxpayer that MO is limited when it comes to authority. Tax verification notice is, in terms of scope, it's limited. Unlike ELA, it's full examination of the books of accounts. Now, with respect to ELA, Electronic Letter of Authority, it's a full audit. It allows the BAR to examine the books of accounts of the taxpayers. It can audit the books, reconcile, conduct examination, came up with working papers, and check third-party reconciliation and matching. Second is mission order. This is for purposes of verification. Again, this is limited in authority. Usually, mission order is conducted for one is to check if you are complying with the registration. That's why it's very important that you put in a conspicuous place in your business your BAR form 2303, which is a certificate of registration. And also the second thing that they have to check is, are you issuing BAR registered invoices and official receipts? And third is, are you keeping books of accounts? So under mission order, they will check your books of accounts, not to examine its content, but to look at if it's updated. Kung may nakatala ba na mga daily transactions. So that's the maximum that they could do with respect to mission order. They cannot conduct an audit for mission order. Now, for tax verification notice, this one, unlike the two audit instruments, this one is more of taxpayer driven because you apply, and as a result of that application, you are under mandatory audit, then you will be issued with tax verification notice. What are example? when you apply for cessation of registration of your business, so you will be subjected to audit under tax verification notice. So that's an example. So this is limited in scope. So that's the first change. Second, single instance audit framework. So good news because we will now be dealing with one BIR authorities, one group for each year. Wala na pong multiple LOAs for the same taxpayer for the same taxable year. Before kasi, if you are a large taxpayers, you will be audited for your all taxes except VAT by the large taxpayer services under Quezon City, the headquarters. Or if you are under LTDO, Makati, Cebu, or Davao, so they will be the one to audit your all taxes except VAT. Now, there is a separate office created to conduct an audit for the large taxpayers' VAT liability, and that is the LTVAO, the large taxpayer VAT audit unit. Okay, so they issue one LOA for whole year for your VAT. So at any given year, you could be issued maximum of two LOAs if you're a large taxpayer, one issued by the Quezon City headquarters or Davao or Makati or Cebu for all taxes except VAT, and LOA for your VAT liability under LTVAO, Large Taxpayers VAT Audit Unit. If you are non-large taxpayers, if you're regular taxpayers, and if you are registered within NCR, you will be audited for all of your taxes except VAT by the region, and under the region, the RDO. And for your VAT liability, you will be audited by the VATAS. This is what we call the VAT audit section. And normally, VATAS issues two LOAs, no? Minsan isa lang, no? Most of the time, one. So they will divide the LOAs into two, one for first semester, the other one is for second semester. So the due date of the first semester is July 25. Let's say for 2025, July 2025, the due date of the second quarter VAT. After that, they can issue a LOA to conduct an audit for your first semester VAT liability. Now, if you are taxpayers outside of NCR, then you will be audited only once because there is no VATAS, there is no VAT audit section for BAR offices outside of NCR. So there's only one tax authorities, the region, and under the region, the RDO, who will conduct an audit for taxpayers registered with BAR outside of NCR. So there will be no more fragmented audit. So the VATAS and the LTVAO will be dissolved by MPA. So what will happen? So if in case you have been audited and you have existing multiple LOAs, one issued by the VATAS or by the LTVAO, if you're a large taxpayer, then that will go to the process of consolidation. Okay, so you will be issued a replacement LOA to cover for the two audits, and you will be facing now only one tax authorities. So the VATAS, which is the VAT audit section for the VAT liability of taxpayers registered under NCR, and the LTVAO for the large taxpayer VAT audit unit will be dissolved. They will wind up and cease their operations by May 29, 2026. The other important change as well is with respect to audit selection. As you all know, that one of the gap that is identified for the audit selection is there is an element of discretion in terms of selecting who is the target taxpayers. Under the new audit program, this is now be a system-assisted risk-based selection process. So no more human intervention. Okay. So it promotes objectivity and integrity. So the issuance of new ELAs shall be governed by system-assisted taxpayer selection. General rule, all taxpayers are potential taxpayers for audit and assessment, but the initiation of audits shall be limited to taxpayers selected through the system in accordance with prescribed criteria. So the criteria are outlined in Annex A of RMO 1 2026. So I won't have time to discuss the criteria. It's a long list. And you can see there Annex A of RMO 1 2026. If you hit multiple criteria, there's a possibility that you will be included in the target list of auditees. So this is the quick process. The ISG, that's the Information System Group, they will generate a list of taxpayers. If a taxpayer will be endorsed for audit by the RDO or by the revenue region, that taxpayer will go to the system, and if it qualifies because it hits a lot of criteria, then it will be included of the list of target taxpayers. That means it is not automatically that you will be audited even if you are recommended by the region. You have to go through they have to go through the process of including you to the system. And if you hit the the criteria, then you will be one of the target audit to be audited. And that list will be anonymized. So there is a system generated identifier, which is not the name, not the TIN, neither any identifier that will disclose to the CIR who is this taxpayer. It's anonymized, that list. And that is based on approved criteria. That will be approved by the CIR. This approval is just ticking on the computer. And then that will be forwarded to the regional directors for assignment, who will be the group supervisor and the revenue officer that will actually handle the audit. So in consideration of the workload balance of the group supervisor and the revenue officer, they will be assigned accordingly. Because as you all know, one RO, his minimum LOAS is 30 at any given time, 30 taxpayers. Okay. And then that list, once the group supervisor and RO will be assigned based on anonymity, that will be returned to ISG, the Information System Group, for de-anonymization. Okay. And then that will be forwarded to the handling office to issue the electronic letter of authority, wherein it's already disclosed there, the name of the taxpayer, the TIN, and the handling group supervisor and revenue officer. Okay, so it's now removed in the process the Tagalog term na suki-suki, no? And then wala na po yan. It's no longer applicable. Okay. Now, what about task forces? As you all know, on top of the regular audit, if there is a taxpayer who is identified to engage in fraudulent transactions or fraudulent practices, their audit will be handled by National Investigation Division if they're under the jurisdiction of the national office. If they're under the jurisdiction of the region and RDO, then the one that will handle the task force is the RID, the Regional Investigation Division. So what happened to the special task forces? We have two special task forces. One is RAF, the Run After Fake Transactions, which to date, they have 30,500 cases. And in addition to RAF, there is task force for special cases, like in flood control. So that's under special cases. So what will happen to these task forces? What they plan is that the cases under RAF will be turned over to the NID, and that will be issued with replacement LOA. The audit will still continue. What is dissolved is just the office of the RAF. How about special cases? They will have to go to two venues. One, if the case is identified to be fraud related, they will go to RID, the Regional Investigation Division. If it's not fraud case, then it will go to the regular RDO. Now, with respect to audit and assessment proper, which is, as you have heard earlier, one of the major comment or complaint by taxpayers is that the assessment is bloated, exaggerated, and there is no factual and legal basis. There is no support. Where did they get the amounts? So to address that complaint, BEAR has come up with an audit and assessment process that will, number one, whoever BAR examiners, group supervisor, or revenue officer will not follow the assessment due process will be penalized. Okay, so zero tolerance on erring BAR officials and personnel. So what are the process or what are the improvements? Number one, there is now a standardized audit checklist, which is a support of the LOA that will be issued to you. If they will mandate submission of documents outside of that standardized audit checklist, you can assert that it's not needed because they will now come up with a standardized audit checklist. Now, they're coming up with a specialized audit checklist for based on industry. Okay, so they are now preparing that. As of today, they haven't come up with one. So what they have come up is only standardized audit checklist. Second, proper documentation of audit events, like any meetings with the taxpayer, any encounter with the taxpayer has to be documented. So there is now minutes of meeting that you have to demand that it should be documented every time you have a discussion with them, especially during the notice of discrepancy conferences. And observance of due process and audit safeguards, and strict oversight of assessment stages. One of the things that was happening before is that the management, the top management of the BAR is not, they don't have visibility as to what is happening in the region and RDO. And because of that lack of visibility, transparency, and also the audit system is not updated as to its events, what transpired on that particular LOA, it promotes now fertile ground for harassment. As you all know, when BR conducts audit, some of the examiners will give you what we call initial assessment. It's not documented. They will just show you in their laptop, no, or they will show you in their hard copy, but they won't allow you to take a picture. They won't allow you to have a copy of that. And in that initial assessment, it's not yet notice of discrepancy, because notice of discrepancy is formally written. So it's prior to NOD. It's what we call that initial assessment. Normally, in my experience, in my 26 years of handling their audit, initial assessment is usually so bloated and exaggerated. Okay, so because it's not visible, it's not transparent to the management. If the amount there, let's say 100 million, and the final amount paid is only one, they will not be liable to be asked to explain what caused the substantial reduction from 100 to 1 million. Because after all, in the first place, the 100 million was not visible to the management. Okay, so the emphasis on the assessment procedures is that all issues laid down by the examiner should be supported by facts and legal basis, and deficiency must be reasonable and proportionate to verified findings, and there should be disclosure as to factual basis, computation, and legal basis. Any unvalidated issues should not be assessed. For example, third-party matching. Supreme Court dictates that when BIR assess you because there's a discrepancy between what you disclose against what your vendors or what your clients have disclosed, there should be a verified confirmation of that third-party information. When you say confirmed, verified, they have issued a sworn statement that they indeed they have sold you this much or they have purchased you this much amount. Okay. Then supervisory review and sanctions for those group supervisor and revenue officer that will not follow. So that ends my first part, the um, update on the new audit programs. They haven't actually issued the detailed audit program, no. But the main one, the RMO 1 2026, is already issued. And you can take a look at that. It's also clarified further by RMO 6-2026. Now let's go to the roadmap to strong tax position. Let's discuss how to build tax compliance position and how to transition, how to effectively manage BIR audit. Okay. Building a strong tax compliance position takes strong practices, no? And I have identified here six. This is the roadmap to your building a strong tax compliance position. Number one is foundational tax knowledge for owners and management. Second, for the internal team handling the accounting and tax, there should be tax competence. And third, there should be an effective tax policies. Fourth, there should be an accounting and tax software which is efficient and functional. And there should be built in the system, in the process, in an annual or quarterly conduct of tax compliance review. And six, there should be that commitment to full tax compliance. For me, number six is very important. Number six is very important. So with respect to foundational tax knowledge for owners and management has to have that foundational knowledge of tax. Foundational. I'm not saying you should know how to file, how you should pay, how you should report. At least you know the foundational basic things. Like, what are the tax costs that my company is liable to pay? What are the tax types? What are the rates? What is the base? What is basically the foundational computation? Like in our tax code, the tax that we have is income tax. We have transfer tax, which includes estate tax and donors tax. We have business tax, including here are three types. We have excise tax, VAT, and other percentage tax. And we have documentary stamp tax, and we have miscellaneous tax. These are the basic tax under our national internal revenue code. And as a business owners and managers, you need to know what are the tax types of my company? What are the tax that my company is liable to pay? Okay. If you want to know, just look at your BIR form 2303. That's the certificate of your registration with BIR. That document outlines your tax type liability or the tax that you are supposed to file, declare, and pay. You also need to know your tax obligation. Like you need to issue sales invoice every time you sell. The rule is if you're a VAT person, any amount of sale has to be issued with VAT invoice. If you're a non-VAT, then you're mandated to issue if the amount is 500 and above. You can aggregate the total sales for the day if each transaction is less than 500. That's the rule if you are a non-VAT taxpayers. You have to secure permit before you use books of accounts. Before you issue the invoice, you have to issue permit. You have to secure permit for that. You have to keep the books of accounts. You have to register your business, your headquarters and branches. And as you deal with vendors, since you are engaged in business, then you are authorized withholding agent. You have to deduct tax from what you pay to them. And you have to timely and completely declare and pay the right taxes. And with respect to reporting, you need to attach to your return who are those customers that you have collected VAT from and who are those vendors that you have paid VAT. So you have to report your sales, your purchases, how much you import, and how much is your salaries of your employees, how much tax did you withhold. Okay. You also need to know what's your tax benefits, like exemptions, deductions, and credits. Like, for example, if your company is enjoying income tax holiday, there's no income for the next 4 years or 6 years, then you have to maximize that. If your clients withheld taxes, then you have to get that certificate because that's money in paper. You can use that as a credit against your income tax liability. If last year you are in an excess income tax position, be sure that that is applied this year. And if you are paying MSIT, MSIT is a tax that is somehow it's a tax loan by the government from us. So they borrow money if we cannot pay based on regular tax, and that's applicable for credit the next 3 years. And then if you have net loss, which can be used to be a deduction in your next 3 years of operations, then you also have to maximize that. If you are selling to clients who are zero rated, you need to know what is the factual and legal basis for that grant of zero rating. If you are selling VAT exempt transactions, you also have to get the factual and legal basis. If you pay VAT on what you purchase, you need to know also that because that is deduction from your VAT on what you sell. So that's a credit. And if you are exempted from withholding tax on your payment to vendors, you also need to maximize that. So you need to find out the legal basis of your entitlement, your reporting and disclosure obligations, factual documentary evidence and support, and prescription. And then building tax competence. This is the second important roadmap, no, the step. Tax competence of internal team. When I say internal team, it may be an external one, but doing an internal work because again, financial and tax accounting is an internal management responsibility. Whether that is delegated to an external party, that is management, that is business responsibility. So we need to build tax competence. Most of the invalid assessment by our tax authorities comes from the failure to really appreciate tax laws and tax obligations. And at times, because they don't know how to manage the audit investigation, some assessment become due and final because of the failure to respond correctly. And that's due to lack of competence. You need to prioritize hiring competent employees, engage qualified external experts to handle your accounting and tax compliance. And as they're there, you need to ensure that they are engaged in continuing education and continuous development of your tax and accounting team to ensure up-to-date expertise. As you all know, no, we always receive every now and then new regulations, new circulars, new RMOs. So they need to know. Effective tax policies, the third one. So you need to build and improve tax policies. Like when you set up your vendors, you need to get their BR form 2303 so that you will be able to encode and set up correctly the information about your vendors and your clients with respect to what's the correct name, whether what is the form of organization, whether they're sole proprietorship, they are taxable partnership, they are GPPs, they are corporations. Proper forms of organization is very important with respect to identifying how much tax to withhold on our payment to them and whether they are availing income tax holiday, what's their income tax status, and what is their VAT registration, whether they are VAT or non-VAT. So you should have effective tax policies with respect to your sales and with respect to your purchase. Example, invoice must issuance date must timing with the delivery receipt or Sales service invoice must coincide with the service slip date or job order date. And purchase policies, for example, you should not accept in vendors invoices that is outside the accounting period. Let's say it's already 2026 and you are still receiving invoices dated 2025. So there should be a clear policy when is the cutoff to receive prior year invoices. And when you receive the invoices, they must comply with the invoicing requirements before accepting them. Build a culture of tax compliance policy from top to bottom and across all business units. It's not the initiative of the tax and accounting group. Oftentimes, the accounting and tax group are the enemies of the sales and marketing and operations because they appear to be hindering sales activity, operating activity because they've imposed a lot of requirements. But if management imposes that because they appreciate the importance of this policy, it will help a lot. It will be a corporate-wide campaign of tax compliance effort. Now, fourth one is accounting system controls. Invest in a reliable financial accounting system to ensure accuracy, completeness, and reliable reconciliation of financial and tax data. And then prioritize good housekeeping of financial records, both hard and soft copies, to support compliance, audit readiness, and data integrity. Fifth one, conduct either a quarterly or annual tax compliance review. You need to find out what is your tax vulnerability, identify top tax risk areas, usually 3 to 5 items, transactions that you are really exposed to, you are vulnerable to tax deficiency assessments. Assess current practices and identify gaps or inconsistencies that expose the business to risk. And strengthen compliance measure. Implement targeted improvements to maximize, if not completely eliminate, the risk of future tax assessment. Tax compliance review is a good tool, no, to assess your tax health. It will help you evaluate your tax costs against commercial purposes. It will help you develop or strengthen your tax policies. It will enhance your people's tax competence. It will improve process effectiveness or efficiency. It will help financial system modification, what to identify, what to modify, what to maximize, and what to shift. Okay. And another important outcome of the tax compliance review is the reconciliation between accounting rules and tax rules. As you all know, they differ, but they are reconcilable. And books of accounts versus financial statements, income tax versus VAT, income tax withheld versus VAT sales report, vatable purchase versus VAT return, and then tax returns versus tax reports. So all of these internal reports must be reconciled. If they don't tie up, they must be explainable. The last one is commitment to full tax compliance. There should be that desire to pay the full tax as a natural consequence of conducting business. And you should avoid tax evasion strategies or practices. This referred to deliberate and willful use of illegal or fraudulent methods by a taxpayer to defeat, to minimize, or cancel tax liabilities. Now, the last roadmap is how do we effectively manage the audit of the BAR? We have 4 steps here or 4 important principles. Number one is we have to be audit ready. Second, we have to have knowledge about how BAR conducts the audit process, the assessment process. Third, we have to have that ability how to audit their audit and come up and organize how do we protest their assessment. And third, we have to be committed to legally settle the assessment, even if at, at the end, BAR in the process will harass, will extort, will give you difficulty. One, adequate preparation for tax audits. We call this audit readiness. as you all know, audit is a battle of facts and legal basis. So you need to prepare, and facts is best evidenced by document. Okay. So you have to retain original copies of source documents. You check whether your source documents and tax credit documentation are valid. And you need to gather legal basis of your tax position. Are you legally grounded on your, especially on your exemption, on your deductions, on your credits? Mainit ang mata ng BIR dito sa mga deductions na to. So, credits, exemptions, and deductions. Now, second is you have to know the assessment process of the BIR. You have to have the technical competence so that you'll be able to resolve tax assessments at the lowest possible cost. And then you have to understand the assessment process in a way that if this phase is happening, what is my obligation? And what is my remedy? And what is the BAR's obligation? And what is the BAR's remedy in each phase? Like when they issue LOA, when they issue first notice, when they issue first, second, and final notice, when they issue subpoena, when they issue notice of discrepancy. And then, you have to also identify who am I dealing with, what office, because as the audit progresses, there will be time that the office that you are handling or dealing will change. Like, for example, LOA is issued by the region and the RDO. So you're dealing with the RDO. The moment it elevates to subpoena, you are now dealing with the legal division of the region. Now, it's very important to know what office are you dealing with, because when you submit your position paper, your reply or protest to the wrong venue, it's equivalent to non-filing, and it's equivalent to waiver of your rights. So it's very important that you identify the specific office or unit responsible for each phase of the audit. Now, since this is very technical, you might want to engage a tax competent third party. My suggestion, my recommendation is that you should have visibility of the third party activities in handling the audit. Don't give them full autonomy. If it's possible, participate in every important meeting and get an update. Where are they now in their audit management? Okay. So, ability to audit the audit of the BAR and come up with a protest on their assessment. So this one is very important. You need to know when you receive the notice of discrepancy, check. How do I check? Many accountants don't know how to check assessment of the BAR. And then they just reply without knowing what exactly is the issue. So we need to determine the real assessment issue, what is the tax consequence, and what is the materiality of the amount. And based on that, you can come up now with an assessment and evaluation. What is the nature? Is it factually based or it is legally grounded? And then you can organize properly your position paper, your reply, and protest. And art, you need to be totally committed to legal settlement. Settle tax assessments with integrity in a lawful and transparent manner, even if situation is hard. Avoid bribery, under the table settlement, even if BAR employs threat, harassment, or extortion. I have encountered a case wherein we were arguing whether if you are coerced to give to the BAR under the table, is that bribery? And the other side is arguing against me that no, it's not bribery, because according to them, legal parlance defines that bribery is the act of offering. And then I told them, you know what? Let's set aside that legal definition. We all know here, we are all Christians, that that's not right to the Lord when you are paying under the table, even if it's not, even if it does not qualify as bribery in legal parlance. But they won. No? So because they also justified additionally that our purpose of giving this money is to prevent a worst thing that could happen, like closure of the business, because they might pay big amount of money. So we prevent unemployment of many people. So they now justify the means, the end. They justify what you call that, the means does not justify the, or the end does not justify the means. So they said it's okay because we have the right purpose, we have the right goal. Okay, that ends my presentation. I hope I'm on time. I didn't exceed. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Brother Mike. Actually, you ended ahead of time. That's great because we have a bit more time for our Q&A. Now, I learned so much personally. Maraming salamat po. It was so practical, educational, and very, very timely. So, I learned a lot about the audit program, no, about the tax structure of the Philippines that really evolved so much that we need to keep ourselves informed all the time. And it's good to hear that our regulators had acted on the clamor of the business sector about after the scandal that erupted last year, no, para maiwasan ang
Yes.
operasyong suki-suki. And really, we also learned how to protect ourselves from harassment. And, we're made aware of certain opportunistic moves by the BIR officers. So maraming salamat kasi we were very equipped and we very much appreciated the roadmap that you shared as well on building a strong tax compliance position. Alam kong maraming details pong shinare si Brother Mike, no? And syempre hindi po natin matatandaan lahat, and some of us, lalo na sa mga bago sa ganitong information, baka na-overwhelm po tayo. But don't worry, Brother Mike has kindly and generously let us know that he can share with us his slides. And this video is also being recorded and will be shared on YouTube para pwede niyo pong panoorin o paulit-ulit, no? Kasi syempre, I'm sure nakalimutan niyo na po yung mga ibang terms na na-mention kanina. But anyway, thank you po ulit, Brother Mike, no? So now, we move on to this portion actually of our program that a lot of us are looking forward to, no? Kasi we received a lot of thoughtful questions from our participants sa kanilang sign-ups, no? Reflecting real situations and tensions that a lot of us business owners and professionals navigate. So now we will be proceeding to our moderated Q&A. Just to let you know, unfortunately, we won't be able to cover all these questions as much as we would love to. But given our limited time, we will focus on questions that may benefit a broader audience. Ayan. So without further ado, tatanong ko na po ang first question natin, no? So, Brother Mike, how can business owners legally minimize taxes? Kasi kanina po, no, napag-usapan ng hindi maganda, of course, ang tax evasion. Pero I'm sure there are legally and biblically sound ways naman po na ma-minimize natin ang taxes while honoring our responsibility to the government and maintaining integrity. And where do we draw the line between wise tax planning and unethical practice?
Okay. Thank you, Hannah, for that first question. Um, there are means provided by the law for taxpayers to reduce its tax obligations. And this is called tax avoidance. So that's legal. Okay. Any means to reduce or cancel tax obligations outside of the legal framework is tax evasion. So tax avoidance is legal, tax evasion is illegal. Okay. Oftentimes, a tax action is actually tax evasion in substance, but it is clothed in tax avoidance or form. Okay. So here we are confronted with an issue, with a situation na ang action is really a tax evasion in substance, but is packaged to make it tax avoidance in form. So what adds strength to that is it's confirmed by tax consultants and it's practiced by many. So many follow because everybody's doing it and it's confirmed by the consultant. It's doable, it's acceptable, it's legally allowed, but actually it's not. No, okay. And if you ask me, oftentimes the line between wise tax planning and an ethical practice is obvious, claro, especially if you're knowledgeable about tax laws and regulations. That's why you need to have that foundational tax knowledge. Okay. Some are so obvious that you don't need biblical depth. What you need is just a strong conviction to do what is right and say no to what is unethical. Now, if you need to know more about in detail about tax planning, normally tax practitioners offer wise tax planning in three areas. Number one, transactional. So you have a contract with a vendor, with a client. You can ask them to study that contract and how to structure that transaction in a way that you could maximize tax. Second, financial statement base. So you have a tax consultant who will look at your FS, look at your balance sheet, look at your income statement, and each line item, they have a way of looking at it to and recommend to you how you could better um, maybe you could accelerate your expenses. It's allowed. There are some rules that allow acceleration expenses, like you can depreciate shorter so that you have a maximized depreciation for the first few years. Or maybe if you need to lengthen depreciation, the economic life, that's also allowed. Or maybe borrowing costs. There's a treatment, there's an alternative treatment, how you treat borrowing costs. It doesn't necessarily need to be an interest expense, but it can form part of your capital asset, especially if you acquire the borrowed money. The interest on the borrowed money is in relation to capital expenditures. Okay, so that's second, financial statement based. Third is structural. If you are in a conglomerate, if you're handling multiple companies, there is a better way how to structure the relationship of multiple companies and come up with a better structure that will promote wise tax planning, save on tax, and you are still legal. I think that's that's the main thing that I want to drive at with this question.
Wow, thank you so much. That's very, very concrete and useful. Yung tatlong principles or pillars no ng tax planning, transactional, um FS based and
Base,
structural. Ayan po.
structural.
Yes, thank you so much. So, you mentioned po, Brother Mike, na no, this is something that we can consult with tax experts, no, especially for those na don't have the time. Actually, almost all business owners, no, would not have so much time to go into these details. And if wala po sila na ganitong expert within their companies, they can always engage a third party to do so. So, my next question is related to that po, no? As Christian business stewards, how can we choose these partners, itong third parties, who will help us build both compliant and ethical businesses? What should we be looking for, or what red flags perhaps should we be aware of?
Okay. As business owner and as management or even treasurer, um, normally kasi the accounting, the finance and corporate tax function is delegated to the treasurer. So if the business owner does wants to delegate that to the top management or the treasurer, one of the first thing that you need to look at is understand really what do you need from them, what do they do, and what's the impact if they will not do it and it will not be done effectively, so that you can appreciate the magnitude importance of their work. Okay, normally a third party will do this multiple things. No, number one is financial accounting, tax accounting. Third is payroll services. There's also third party that will offer corporate services or corporate housekeeping. And there's another one, assurance services. This is the rendition of auditors report wherein they conduct an opinion, they render an opinion with respect to the reasonableness of your financial statements. Okay. And then they offer also management of BAR audit. Okay. Take note that one of the red flag is that when you have an external party who handle both financial and tax accounting with assurance, that's a red flag. Because under the code of ethics promulgated by BOA, that those two functions are incompatible. Kasi assurance services is supposed to check the work of an accountant who does the financial accounting and tax accounting. Now, some third parties would make it appear informed that they are independent, but actually both are under common control by the same one third party provider. Red flag. The other one is second is you have to look at their competence, their minimum eligibility, if they're really able to deliver your desired services. Okay. So you look at their company profile, the feedback from their existing customers, their reputation. So those are the things. Take note that not all accountants are good tax practitioners, but accountants can be the best tax practitioners because these two fields are complementary. Tax complement accounting. Okay. So, but again, it would be unwise to conclude that accountants are good tax practitioners. In fact, I've met a lot of accounts of my of people who consulted me that they are disappointed because many of their accountants don't know about tax regulations. It's understandable because it's totally different field. Okay. And um, ensure also that they have software, no, that will house your accounting, financial transactions, and tax transactions. It's very difficult to engage a third party who handles your financial accounting and tax accounting manually. It offers a lot of vulnerability on your end, especially when it comes to BAR audit. Okay. And I think the third one is you should come up with a service level agreement and demand that they should report quarterly. Isa sa mga problem ng mga accountants, ng mga client natin is at the end of the year, they discovered na hindi updated ang books. Kahit January, hindi pa book, hindi pa kept properly. So, you need to have a service level agreement wherein you demand you should report quarterly, at least minimum quarterly, so that you won't be surprised and do not allow adjustment that close quarter without your approval. So you should have a say. You should have a say about your accounts. After all, it's you who will face before SEC and before BAR because you're the one certifying that this is correct. The accountant who does the assurance will just certify that it is reasonable, fairly presented. I think those are the most important things that I would like to recommend and also emphasize.
Yes, ayun po. Maraming salamat, no. Na I learned from Brother Mike na hindi lang importante that we choose our partners well, although it's critical na alam natin na hindi lang sila magaling na accountant kung hindi magaling na tax accountant, but that we also install good practices once we engage them. We won't just hand it over to them and let them take care of everything, no? So throughout the process of them preparing our taxes, we should also be involved and participate. So that's I think
Also, Hannah, let me add, beware of what we call notarial accountant.
Mm,
We call them notarial accountants.
right.
Sila yung pumipirma na pikit mata, they don't audit. They don't
Right.
audit. After all, they do that because clients are not willing to pay the
Mm,
corresponding fees of conducting an audit. So normally, they just accommodate the audit procedures based on the corresponding fees. So they
mm,
don't review, they just sign blindly. And
mm,
second, also, you need to also look at how do they approach the management or handling of the BR audit? Because some accountants, because they have that in mind that anyway this client will just settle, so why bother doing good housekeeping if the end result of this audit investigation will just be settled? So why bother doing it right?
Yes.
So if that's the approach of the accountant, then you have to be careful. Probably your account is not handled well.
Yeah. So it seems to really boil down to the intention of the business owner. Kung ano po talaga yung nasa heart natin, kung gusto po ba talaga nating magbayad ng tamang taxes or hindi, no? Because that defines the approach. So thank you for that, Brother Mike. So my next question po is actually more of encouragement lang siguro for a lot of us, no, kasi alam po natin na malaki po ang impact ng tax on our margins, especially for certain businesses, especially for SMEs, no, na nagsisimula pa lang. So for you po, what can business owners do when trying to follow proper financial and tax practices when this seems to put them at a disadvantage compared to competitors who cut corners?
Mm. Uh, Number one po is it's really it's really advocated by not just by God, no, but even by the government that we do business the right way. And one of that is paying the right taxes. And we should never compromise, no, by adapting or by doing what others um, are doing, no, especially cutting corners. Uh, we should not look at we should be envious of their progress, but instead we should continue to compete with truthfulness, with quality, and with righteousness. Now, doing that may may lead us to look at on a human perspective at a disadvantageous position, no, but actually it's not, no. Maybe for the time being and materially or physical or
Yeah,
material component, no. Sandali lang po, i-charge ko lang yung laptop ko.
sure po.
Nag-warning. Okay.
Yeah.
Mm, mm. And we always have that tendency, no, to envy those who
Mm.
seem to prosper through wickedness. Actually, may verse ako dyan na Proverbs 24:19, no? Sabi dito sa Proverbs 24:19, it says here, fret not thyself because of evil men, neither be thou envious at the wicked. Okay. Same also sa Psalm 37 verse 1 to 3, no? Okay. So, but actually, if you look at it, those who are cutting corners are not only disapproved by God, but also by our government and even by their clients and vendors. Ultimately, kasi po, those clients and vendors who are engaged in corporate governance, good corporate governance and tax compliance will eventually not patronize them. It's
Mm.
just a matter of time because they will find this person eventually not trustworthy.
Mm.
So you in the end you will win, no? You will win. They might win temporarily in our human perspective, but again, in the eyes of God, they lose already, no? Remember, sinful actions of men are in the hands of God. So let's just be patient and continue to do the right thing. It's there's no more comforting and disposition than knowing that you are doing the right thing before God and He is pleased and honored of that act.
Yes, wow. Yeah, thank you so much for that wonderful reminder. Talagang it's more of a reframing lang talaga and posture of the heart. Kung tumitingin po tayo in the ways of this world or in God's reality, in the true picture, no, in His eyes. So, because indeed, He is the true owner of our businesses, and if we know that we are merely managers, if naisa puso talaga natin, no, it's something that is not so difficult as difficult for us to do, to surrender, to trust and to obey. And naalala ko rin lang po, no, ang sinasabi ng isa sa mga overseers natin sa BAM, si Brother Richard, there is no receiver if there is no giver. So that is our small way rin, no,
Mhm.
of helping this
Correct.
country become a holy nation in our small way. no? And if so many of us do it together, then what could the Philippines become, right? So ayun po. Now, we are quite out of time already, but before we end our section, let me ask one last question po. No? So, for business owners who genuinely want to shift toward more compliant and God-honoring practices, but may feel overwhelmed, behind, discouraged by past mistakes or current realities. Actually, this is more of a closing thought lang po. What final words of encouragement would you like to leave with them tonight, Brother Mike?
If you really want to transition to full tax compliance, one of the things that I would like to highlight is genuine transition to compliance and God honoring practices is costly because in reality, this involves not just paying the right tax going forward, but also restitution or paying the cost of past sins. And these are part of genuine repentance. Okay. I would advise, actually, honestly, Hannah, in actual practice, mahirap tong i-advise eh. But as an advocator or as a believer of God, I would do injustice to all of you if I do less, no? If I advise less of what God wants me to say before all of you. So first step is evaluate, no, and know your non-compliance practices and the amount of tax that you haven't paid to the government because of such practice. Okay. So, yun yung unang hakbang, no? Know your non-compliance practice and compute. And again, if you need the help of tax consultant, you can, so that you will arrive at an amount that is guided by an expert. Okay. I call this first step as definition of sin that you need to confess. So, kailangan mong i-confess sa Diyos kung ano yung totoong kasalanan mo, no? So, you need to find out, where did I do wrong? And how much did I deprive the government of the rightful tax? Okay. And second step is to, ito mahirap to, but this is the right thing to do. If the covered years, if there are years covered by that review are still open, they have not been audited by the BIR, and if they are still allowed to be amended, then this is a bold suggestion or recommendation, bold move. You amend. You amend and pay that tax, no, that you have deprived the government of. Though there is an accompanying penalty. And if the deficiency is more than 30%, that's a presumptive fraud, then the penalty is even higher. The surcharge is 50%. For non-fraud, it's 25%. Okay. Okay. So this is what I call restitution, paying the costs of past sins. And there are some practices that will continue to haunt you unless you resolve it. May mga under declaration ka in the past na hindi mo pwedeng tanggalin lang sa audited financial statements. You really have to address it clearly and then declare it, no? Kasi kung bigla na lang siya mawala sa libro or bigla na siyang pumasok, it's questionable as well. Okay. And then third step po is you transition to 100% compliance. Kasi yung iba sasabihin nila, gradual, next year, 10%, next year, 40%, next year. But sa akin is, that's unqualified, that's qualified obedience eh. So if you really want to obey God unqualifiedly, then declare full, no? Declare full. Okay. And oftentimes, doing the right thing will create, the devil will create, will instigate fear upon you. What will be the consequence, no? I remember one discussion that I have na we spend a lot of time, long time in listing the possible things that will happen if they will transition to full tax compliance. And then I told the prospective client, you know what? You could list a lot of things that will cause you to fear and be paralyzed with inaction and not move to transition. It's really a matter of faith, no? Because these steps are costly, okay? And most of the time, this is the main cause of businessmen withdrawing from that path to compliance. And I think my last verse that I would like to encourage all of you is in First Timothy chapter 6, verse 17. Just the thought that we need not trust riches. It says here that command or charge them that are rich in this world not to trust, not to be high-minded, and not trust in the riches, but trust in the living God who giveth us richly all things to enjoy. So what my point is, entrust to the living God who giveth richly all things that we need to enjoy because he can be trusted, not on the riches that we have accumulated. Okay. So genuine transition to full tax compliance is an issue of faith, it's an issue of greed, it's an issue of covetousness. And you need to examine, no, what push you to compliance. Do I hate tax evasion really as a sin? Because if you don't, your strength to continue will be interrupted, no? Kung ang layunin mo talaga is not that utmost na I hate tax evasion because it's sin. Okay, so, and if you don't move to tax compliance, you perpetuate the presence of sin in your business life. And we know the consequence of that. God is not honored and God is not glorified. I think
Yes.
that's my last encouragement for all of us.
Amen. Thank you so, so much, Brother Mike, once again. And to answer the question we had at the start of this webinar, kaya po ba talaga natin magbayad ng taxes righteously and fully to the government whom we owe it to? And the answer is yes. No? Kayang-kaya po natin itong gawin because we draw not from ourselves, but we draw from the God of the impossible. Ayan. All right. So thank you, Brother Mike, for sharing your expertise and wisdom with us tonight. If you would like to get a copy of his PowerPoint, and if you have any questions regarding the webinar, you may contact Ms. Shekinah Salamat at the contact information we have here on screen. All right. So to close us, no, let me just say a few words lang na sometimes doing business in this country can really feel like an uphill battle because we're going against systemic pressures. I personally find it frustrating at times, a lot of times, and I know many of you feel the same way. But we remain steadfast as we honor or as we anchor ourselves in God's word and we fix our eyes on our Lord, who is ultimately in control and who is the true owner of our businesses. Let us remind ourselves that we are only his servants. And whether our master entrusts us with 5 talents or with just one, we are called to faithfully steward what he had given to us. It all makes sense when we anchor ourselves in the gospel. So let me remind ourselves of our theme verse in Matthew 6, verses 19 to 21, that says, "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where your treasure and for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." So, fellow Christian business stewards, God is faithful when we trust and obey him. Let us let his truth and not merely worldly outcomes be the driver of our actions. Let us rest in his promises as we're reminded in Jeremiah 29, verse 11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a home. And let us live in light of the eternal weight of our actions, that one day we may hear him say to us, "Well done, good and faithful servant."